Ladies and gentlemen.
Let me tell you something, brother.
It's Talk Wrestling Live with Felix The Cat Katlovski
and Gemini Joe.
It doesn't matter what your name is.
We heard rumbling. No, we heard rumors. Homicide. Conan. 5150 at LAX.
Listen live on Mondays at 4 p.m. on NorthCoastUnderground.com.
and follow us on Twitter at TWL 24/7.
I'm in no mood for your wisecrack. Let's get it on.
Hey everybody, this is Felix The Cat Katlovski, and we're just about to get started with Fear After Dark, where we will be recapping everything that happened from the June 7th episode of Impact Wrestling. Are you scared? It's time for Fear After Dark.
I thought this was fun and games.
Fear is a funny thing.
En cero, miedo.
Fear was meant for the art of survival. I am the new beginning.
Because we are for Ohio. By Ohio. Because we are Ohio versus everything.
I'm better than every single one in that locker room. Tessa Blanchard is undeniable.
I'm not a man. I'm a machine.
Hey everybody, this is Felix The Cat Katlovski, and we're back on Talk Wrestling Live. This is Fear After Dark. Like I said, we are recapping everything from Impact Wrestling from June 7th. We're starting off with Cousin Jake taking on Ace Austin. Ace Austin was like a magician with the choice of his cards. He always comes out with the Ace of Spades, and Austin used one of his cards to slice Cousin Jake in the face. Now, Cousin Jake, he's a big man, so I'm surprised Austin wanted to pick a fight against somebody bigger than him. Now, the Desi Hit Squad, they made their interference in this match, and it allowed for Ace Austin to get the victory. Ace Austin was feeling so confident after his victory that he was calling himself a heavyweight. And then we had Taya Valkyrie, and she took on Rosemary. So Taya Valkyrie was displaying her Hollywood attitude just like her husband Johnny Impact. And Taya was interviewed by Melissa Santos from Lucha Underground. She now works for Impact Wrestling. Just before this match, that's when the interview took place. Now, during that interview, Taya told Melissa that she thought she was done with her one-time rival Rosemary, and she thought Rosemary was crawling back to the hole that she came from. But Taya has been living it up in Slamtown, while Rosemary has been chasing demons like Su Yung. So Rosemary brought a chained and collared Su Yung to the ring, and she kept her tied to the post, just like a pet dog. Rosemary told Su Yung to be good, as she waited for Rosemary to get the match over with before it even began. So you could tell by her body language that Su Yung didn't want to be there, and we saw both ladies, they were just battling it out through the match, and out of nowhere, Jessica Havoc showed up. I remember Jessica Havoc back in Impact Wrestling a while ago. We've seen her recently. She made her return to Impact Wrestling back in March on a Twitch special called Opening Day, and it was during a joint show between Impact Wrestling and Rockstar Pro Wrestling over in Dayton, Ohio. But it looks like Jessica Havoc is back on Impact programming, and not just for a special. Father James Mitchell accompanied Havoc to the ring while she was interfering in Taya and Rosemary's match. And we all know the beef going on between Rosemary and Father James Mitchell. Rosemary blamed James Mitchell for Allie's death, but Father James Mitchell told her that it was the other way around. Rosemary and Havoc had a stare down, but the peace didn't last very long when Havoc overpowered Rosemary during a test of strength. Now, Rosemary took a headbutt from Havoc in Taya's match against Rosemary, and the match ended in a DQ, but just then, James Mitchell, he signaled that thumbs down, and Jessica Havoc got the cue. She understood what that meant. She delivered a tombstone to Rosemary. Now, Taya didn't know where she was. All she knew was that she wanted to get out of the ring badly. But James Mitchell, he didn't let that happen. He prevented that as he was on the outside. And from another direction, you had Su Yung screaming in Taya's face. And she was still chained to the ring post on the outside, so she couldn't really move that far. But Taya knew that she had nowhere to go. And that's when Jessica Havoc delivered a chokeslam to the Knockouts champion, Taya Valkyrie. That's when Don Callis made a funny comment saying that the freaks come out at night, and boy were they right, as Father James Mitchell freed Su Yung, removing her chain and collar. So Su Yung had to be feeling great being freed by both James Mitchell and Jessica Havoc.
I don't know, I think Su Yung might have liked being chained up, if you know what I mean.
Well, it might have excited her, what can I say? Now, the Rascals were all in their circle, and Trey Miguel was feeling left out. He knew he wasn't scheduled in the match, but he was dressed in his ring ring gear when it was actually Desmond Xavier and Zach Wentz that would soon be having their tag team matchup. Now, since Trey wasn't having a match, he figured he would relax to a cold one, so he downed not a shot, but a whole cup. Then he had another while Zach Wentz was implying Trey has a drinking problem.
Well, he wouldn't be the first wrestler to have a drinking problem. Maybe he was channeling his inner Sandman or Stone Cold Steve Austin there.
Well, we'll get to the Sandman later, but you do make a good point right there. So we had a flashback moment of the week, and that was a classic matchup from a one-night-only Global Impact, USA versus the World from 2015. And back then, you had both Josh Matthews and JB Jeremy Borash on the commentary team for that show.
I think they're production workers for NXT now, I believe.
Well, JB might be.
Josh Matthews is still in Impact Wrestling. I was just talking about Borash. Okay, go on.
So, Mr. Anderson was taking on the Great Muta back then. Anderson was representing Team Impact. Now, the finish of that match saw the Great Muta hitting the Shining Wizard, and then we saw Muta spit his famous green mist at Mr. Anderson. Now, Muta actually licked the green mist off of Anderson's face after he pinned Anderson to get the victory. That's kind of disgusting right there, but I guess he was trying to be conservative with the amount of mist that he had. Maybe he doesn't have a lot of mist, so he needs to save it.
Well, we don't even know what the mist is. I mean, the mist could be sweet. I mean, all we know is that the mist is blinding, so maybe the mist is a whole bunch of sugar or something. Once again, doing a good job here promoting the Great Muta ahead of his appearance on Impact Plus that he had last Saturday.
That's right, and we'll be talking briefly about that as well. So, the Sandman, you brought him up, he made an appearance on Impact Wrestling where they were doing a show from the 3200 Arena, also known as the ECW Arena. And the Sandman, he was on the phone backstage. He was sitting by two kegs. He was doing something on television that we're not going to talk about. But that's when Eddie Edwards approached him, and Eddie said that while he appreciated his help during his previous match last week, that he can't accept the gift that Sandman gave Eddie, that being a brand new kendo stick. But the Sandman told Eddie Edwards that he probably didn't know that he was an artist. So the Sandman drew a nice happy smiley face on the kendo stick and he called it Kenny 2.0. Now, hearing that and seeing that, Eddie Edwards was happy again to have received a new Kenny as the Sandman walked off.
That's a nice interaction. Obviously, we know the Sandman was famous for always carrying a kendo stick to the ring. And of course, we knew that Killer Kross destroyed the original Kenny, and that kind of devastated Edwards. So now the Sandman, helping out a fellow boy in the ring, gave Edwards a new Kenny.
It was Tommy Dreamer that gave Eddie Edwards that first Kenny, that first kendo stick.
Right.
So Tommy Dreamer was kind of passing the torch, because he did have a feud with Eddie Edwards at one point, and towards the end of it, that's when I guess Tommy Dreamer was passing the torch on to Eddie Edwards. Now, I don't know if the Sandman is doing the same thing here, or if it's like, hey kid, buzz off, here's your kendo stick, I'm gonna draw a smiley face, get out of my face, I got other things to do. Because he was talking on the phone.
Yeah, I think it's just something because, like you said, they were at the 2300 Arena in Philadelphia where the Sandman made a name for himself. Nice little callback to wrestling history there by Impact Wrestling.
Absolutely. And then we saw footage of Impact Wrestling World Champion The Machine, Brian Cage, and he was training for his return after he was taken out of action by Unbreakable Michael Elgin. And this was while Brian Cage had been battling Johnny Impact for the Impact World Championship. That's when Brian Cage won that match to become the new champion. But Elgin, he's been bashing Brian Cage for releasing this video update of him training because it's just Brian Cage looking for attention. He just went through an injury. People are saying concussions. Now he comes out with a video looking like he's tough, training, lifting weights. So the Unbreakable Michael Elgin, he has already proven that he could outfight the Machine, and Elgin has been busy working by saving his place in line for the World Championship and taking his opponents out of the picture by sending them to the hospital just like he did to Brian Cage.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing, I don't know when that match is gonna happen between Michael Elgin and Brian Cage, but I'll tell you one thing, somebody's going to the hospital there.
Well, it's happening at Slammiversary, and we'll talk about that later, but Michael Elgin mentioned that he would be facing Willie Mack next week on Impact, which that's going to be this week on Impact, but he wanted to send a message symbolically imagining or visualizing Brian Cage when Elgin faces Willie Mack. So whatever amount of pain Elgin plans to unleash on Willie Mack, it's only going to be a preview of what he plans to do to the Impact World Champion. So we'll be talking more about Impact Wrestling right after these messages. Ride the winds, flying far and soaring like a hawk.
Run a marathon with the endurance of a tiger.
Swim across the ocean like a dolphin.
Beast Energy X. Do you have it in you?
Buy Beast Energy X at all Waffle Max locations and unleash the beast in you.
Join the Beast Energy X fan club and get free perks. Sign up by following us on Twitter at Beast Energy X.
Follow us on Twitter at TWL 24/7.
I'm not finished with you!
And now, let's get back to the show. And we're back on Talk Wrestling Live. This is Felix The Cat Katlovski, and this is Fear After Dark, where we're still talking about everything that happened on Impact Wrestling from June 7th. We were just talking about Michael Elgin and his plans for Brian Cage. We know they're facing each other at Slammiversary, but until then, Michael Elgin knows he has a match with Willie Mack, and he's preparing for that match by imagining or visualizing Brian Cage when he faces Willie Mack. So when he sees Willie Mack, he's really seeing Brian Cage, and this is a preview of what he wants to do to Brian Cage at Slammiversary. Moving on from Michael Elgin and Brian Cage and Willie Mack, we had Madman Fulton taking on two unnamed wrestlers in a 2-on-1 handicap match. Fulton had Sami Callihan accompany him to the ring, and Callihan, he was getting Fulton in the zone by slapping him in the face a few times. I guess that's kind of a ritual that they do, just, you know, get pumped up, get hyped up. This is like a cult leader over here. I mean, they live in a compound of wrestlers, and with OVE over there, there's no telling what those guys do. I've seen Sami Callihan tie up Madman Fulton and make him watch nothing but snow signal on a TV screen. He's just brainwashing him. We've seen this kind of stuff going on with OVE. Sami Callihan controlling his monster, but the Madman was unleashed on these two wrestlers, and they were no match for Madman Fulton. Fulton was taking out two grown men, and Fulton individually gave both men a chokeslam, and then he hit another chokeslam on both of them at the same time. But it wasn't over yet, as Sami Callihan ordered Fulton to kill them, and Fulton delivered one more move, sending one of the local wrestlers to fall on the other, as Fulton shortly afterwards pinned both men at the same time to win the match. So Callihan still wasn't done, but this time he was targeting another tag team at Impact Wrestling. Callihan was sick of the Knockouts division as well, but more specifically he was sick of Scarlett Bordeaux and Fallah Bahh embarrassing OVE. So Scarlett and Fallah Bahh were victorious over OVE previously, and OVE, that's Dave and Jay Chris, and that didn't make Sami Callihan very happy. So Callihan called out Scarlett, and he called her Scarlett the Harlot, which is a very derogatory term used against women in the 16th century. So immediately after Callahan's monster Madman Fulton took out two local wrestlers, it was now time for some OVE action, as the Chris brothers took on Scarlett Bordeaux and Fallah Bahh, otherwise known as Beauty and the Bahh. What do you think of that name, Joe?
Kind of a cute little play off Beauty and the Beast, but yeah, I mean, Scarlett Bordeaux, she is beautiful, and, you know, nice to see that Fallah Bahh finally got his dream. He got to be with Scarlett Bordeaux. For all that time, he was trying to land her as his manager, but now she's his partner.
Well, he would have had to share her with KM as well, so now that they're a team, Scarlett and Fallah Bahh, Beauty and the Bahh, he gets to have her all to himself.
Lucky him.
How do you think that makes Fallah Bahh feel?
He makes him feel Bahh, if you know what I mean.
Well, he doesn't say many words, so if he's excited, that's probably what he's going to say as well.
Yeah.
So we had OVE versus Beauty and the Bahh, like I mentioned, and Sami Callihan and Madman Fulton. Well, instantly they were ejected from ringside for trying to interfere in the match, so their strategy didn't work out right there. But Dave Christ, he was wearing some Cleveland Browns themed OVE pants, so Cleveland Browns represented right there on Impact Wrestling. And Scarlett Bordeaux, she is the only female on her team, but there's no woman on the team of OVE. So, Joe, which female wrestler would you want to see join OVE? And they have to be from anywhere in the great state of Ohio.
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know. I mean, you put me on the spot there, but I don't know. Maybe, I don't know if she's from Ohio, but maybe the former Sienna, Allison Kay. She might be an interesting partner for OVE.
I was thinking maybe Jessica Havoc, but I guess she's kind of tied with Father James Mitchell, so maybe Sienna would be a cool return if she is from Ohio.
Yeah, we saw her in AIW, the local Cleveland promotion, so.
Getting back to the match, at some point, Fallah Bahh, he was taking a lot of damage, and he had to make a tag. But as he attempted, Dave Christ, well, he pulled Scarlett Bordeaux from the ring apron. But eventually, when things cooled down, Ba did get the tag. Then Dave Christ got a whole lot of Scarlett Bordeaux booty right in his face with that stink face.
That was probably the most action he's ever gotten.
So Scarlett delivered a tilt-a-whirl head scissors to both members of OVE individually. So some more action for OVE right there. And when Fallah Bahh dives through the ropes, they call it a tsunami. And that's what happened right there. He just dived like a suicide dive through the ropes. And that's when OVE was trapped right in the middle of the path of the storm. So Scarlett, she went for another high-risk maneuver of her own as she flipped onto the Christ brothers. Jake Christ had Scarlett on his shoulders at that point, but she outsmarted him with a reverse Hurricane Rana, and they traded places, and this time Jake Christ was on Fallah Bahh's shoulders. I don't think Jake Christ wanted to be there. And Scarlett delivered a doomsday device on Jake, paying homage to Road Warrior Animal and Road Warrior Hawk from the Legion of Doom. But it wasn't enough to keep Jake down as he kicked out at 2. Bahh, he got up on the turnbuckle, and just as he was about to deliver the bonsai drop, just like Rikishi used to, Scarlett got on his back, and as she was piggybacking off Fallah Bahh, they both came down on Jake Christ. But Scarlett kind of landed wrong, and it looked like she had taken some damage of her own from that move. So Jake gave Dave a roll of quarters that you exchange for cash at the bank, but instead of taking it to the bank, which is really what they should have done, Dave hit Fallah Bahh with it. So Dave kicked Scarlett off the ring apron, and he finished off a fallen Fallah Bahh with a pinfall victory. And OVE then double-teamed on Scarlett while Fallah Bahh was still down, and this sent out Tessa Blanchard to make the save. Now, Tessa recently turned face when she made up with Gail Kim as Tessa retired Gail, and then we saw even more of a face turn when Tessa made the save, coming to the aid of Ashley Vox, who Disco Inferno Glenn Gilberti was assaulting. So now Tessa Blanchard, she's taking on both members of OVE, Jake and Dave Christ. OVE had bad intentions for Tessa Blanchard. Now, Tessa, on the other hand, had plans as she took out one of the Christ brothers to the canvas, and she nailed the other brother in the jewels. So both Tessa and Scarlett would make a fierce tag team, and they've shown before that they can go among the men. So I'm looking forward to if they form a tag team, because these are both women who can go on their own against the men.
It's a possibility, maybe leading to something in the future.
So then we had Melissa Santos, and she met up with Rich Swann and Willie Mack. Mack had some words for Michael Elgin, who he'll be facing on Impact later this week. So Mack brought up how everybody on the Impact roster are putting food on the table for their families, but if Elgin is sending people to the hospital, then they can't. So Mack said he's ending any more attempts by Michael Elgin to send people to the hospital. So Willie Mack, he's sick of it. He's looking out for not just himself, but other wrestlers who have to face the same thing. Because Michael Elgin, he's just sending people to the hospital. He doesn't want anybody else to get a title shot but himself.
Hey, take out the competition while the champion's recovering. Not a bad move if you're Michael Elgin there.
And that's exactly what his plans are. Now, Rich Swann was telling Willie Mack that Mack has always had Swann's back, and later this week, Rich Swann will be watching Willie Mack's back. I don't know, that kind of sounds fishy to me. I mean, I know they're a good tag team and all, but Rich Swann, he's got a new look, he shaved his beard. I don't know if that's a sign, maybe it's just a coincidence, just a change of scenery. You never know with these guys. I certainly haven't seen any problems, any friction between this team yet, but it could be coming.
We'll see what happens. Maybe it's a foreshadowing of something to come.
So then Johnny Impact and Johnny Bravo, they came to ruin Rich Swann and Willie Mack's day. That's when Johnny Impact told Rich Swann that Swann is on a diet, because next time they meet, Rich Swann will be 10 pounds lighter, as Johnny Impact will be taking the X Division title away from Rich Swann. And then Sami Callihan wasn't happy with his boys in OVE because they didn't get the job done. They lost to Scarlett Bordeaux and Fallah Bahh. But now Callihan was setting his sights on Tessa Blanchard, so we'll see how this escalates.
That'll be an interesting match if they do decide to do a Sami Callihan versus Tessa Blanchard match.
Yeah, I mean, how violent do you think Sami Callihan would get against Tessa Blanchard? And I mean, Tessa Blanchard, she's a diamond, so she's not anybody to be messing with, because she can outsmart you just like that. She's a Blanchard after all.
It'd definitely be an interesting contest, to say the least.
So then we had Kiera Hogan, and she took on Jordan Grace. Now, Jordan was in control for the majority of the match, I'd say, but there was a point when Kiera was helpless in the corner, and she was pleading with Jordan. Kiera offered Grace her friendship, but then she psyched her out way too early, and Grace wasn't playing around. Now later in the match, Kiera was sent face first into the turnbuckle. Jordynne Grace finished out the match with the Grace driver, and she got the victory with a pin. And then we had LAX. They were hanging out in their lair. Konnan wasn't very happy because Santana, he was just sleeping and snoring, and it didn't make it any better that Ortiz was eating because he said that he skipped breakfast. Santana woke up and he wanted to eat as well, but Konnan didn't think LAX were paying attention because the main event was up next, and it was going to be LAX taking on the Rascals. So LAX were confident because all of the previous tag teams they've beaten before, like the Lucha Bros, and plus LAX, they're the Impact Wrestling Tag Team Champions. But Konnan didn't want them to get too cocky because there could be new tag team champions real quick if they continued thinking like that. Now both members of LAX, they kept stuffing their faces with food after Konnan left, and Ortiz was pointing out that the Rascals are from Toledo, so there's no way they're going to get the win. Now, I don't know what that had to do with anything. You could be from anywhere. I don't care if it's Toledo, but you can't underestimate somebody just from where he's from or where she's from.
Interesting choice of a dig there from LAX for sure.
I think maybe it's just that when you think of Toledo, you usually just think of like middle of nowhere, kind of like it's not a huge city. So maybe LAX was thinking, oh, you got to have these big Miami folk or big Los Angeles folk or something like that.
The only thing I know Toledo for is it has the AAA affiliate of the Detroit Tigers.
Well, that's the baseball world for you.
Yeah.
So then Moose was outside and he was bashing ECW legends as how he put it, they would come out for retirement to pay rent. So Moose set his focus on RVD, talking about how he never idolized Rob Van Dam. Moose was offended that 20 years later, Rob Van Dam is back and he's still calling himself Mr. Monday Night.
Well, I guess it would be Mr. Friday Night now, since Impact Wrestling is on Friday nights on the Pursuit channel.
I mean, he was still Mr. Monday Night back on Raw back in the day, and that's not going away. Just like Booker T being the five-time WCW champion sucker. That's not going away either. No matter how many times he's won the title again, or the world title, he's still going to say that because that's his catchphrase.
Yeah, true.
So Moose challenged RVD, Rob Van Dam, to a match at Slammiversary on Sunday, July 7th, from Dallas, Texas. And then it was time for our main event, which was for the Impact Wrestling Tag Team titles. It was LAX, Santana, and Ortiz, the champions, taking on the Rascals, Desmond Xavier, and Zach Wentz. So as LAX made their way to the ring, they stopped by Don Callis, an executive vice president of Impact Wrestling and also a member of the commentary team. But while Callis was on the job, he was drinking a flask. I'm sure you know what was in it. That flask LAX brought to the ring. Now, it didn't leave a good taste in Don Callis' mouth as he was coughing it all up just before the match began. And at some point in the match, Ortiz got mad because Trey Miguel also drank from his flask. Ortiz began drinking it, but Desmond punched Ortiz in the gut area, and the alcohol was just shooting out of Ortiz's mouth, just spitting it up on the referee on accident. The referee probably couldn't see from that, burning in his eyes. So now remember, it was Trey that had been drinking from the flask that I guess reportedly contained moonshine that Ortiz brought. I guess he was still confused, or he really wanted to get in on the action, so he rolled up Ortiz even though he wasn't the legal man, nor was he even scheduled for the match. That's Trey Miguel. Since the ref was blinded by the alcohol, Ortiz spit it up in his face, and the ref was just trying to do his job the best that he could. But when he saw Trey pinning, he got confused, and he counted to 3 for the pin. Now, the Rascals were just about to be declared the new Impact Wrestling Tag Team Champions when all of a sudden, the blinded referee, he got his vision back, and he reversed the decision after a second official told him what had actually happened, meaning that LAX were still the Impact Wrestling Tag Team Champions because Trey Miguel caused the disqualification by getting involved in that match. So Desmond Xavier and Zach Wentz were not too happy with Trey for blowing their opportunity for them. Just moments ago, Trey thought that he had won the Tag Team Championship and he was celebrating with it. We have a little bit more news about Impact Wrestling. I did want to mention that there was a show on Saturday, June 8th. It was called A Night You Can't Miss from the 2300 Arena. That's also known as the ECW Arena. This is what was scheduled. We knew that the Rascals were facing OVE. We knew that Luchasaurus from Lucha Underground, he was taking on Moose. Some people know Little Guido. Some people know Nunzio. He took on Clayton Gaines. I think he's a regular at House of Hardcore. We also had a Knockouts title match. Taya, the champion, she was facing Jordan Grace. We had a House of Hardcore title match where Willie Mack, the champion, was taking on not one but two other men, that being Rich Swann and Teddy Hart. We had a Philly street fight where Eddie Edwards was taking on Sami Callihan. We also had the Great Muta in action along with Tommy Dreamer. They were tag teaming and they took on Michael Elgin and Johnny Impact. Now, one show that I didn't see just yet was Digital Destruction. It took place on Sunday, June 9th. As a Twitch special, and the main event was Taya and Johnny Impact, as well as Moose, taking on Jordan Grace, Tommy Dreamer, and Billy Gunn. Now, I think that was an interesting way of booking things because I think we were supposed to see Joey Ryan taking on Billy Gunn, but as always, the card is subject to change, and that it did. So we'll be talking more about Impact Wrestling, and when we do, it'll be Lights Out, where we'll talk about what's coming soon to Impact Wrestling.
Man, this sucks. I can't go to the baseball game because I have to pack. We're moving next week and I have to get enough large boxes.
Did someone say oxes?
No, I said boxes. Ox's boxes are strong like an ox and durable for moving trips.
They're also biodegradable, which is just great for the environment. Download the Oxys Boxes app on your phone today, and your first box is free. And now we're offering same-day deliveries if you order before 4 p.m. on any given business day. Like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter.
Follow us on Twitter at TWL 24/7.
I'm not finished with you!
And now, let's get back to the show. Hey everybody, this is Felix The Cat Katlovski, and we were just talking about Impact Wrestling. We were recapping the show from June 7th. We're about to start talking about what's coming soon here on Lights Out.
Hello, ladies.
Shut up, 5. A 10 is talking.
I'm surprised you're containing yourself. It's like looking at a work of art, Josh. Scarlett Bordeaux has arrived on Impact Wrestling. Oh my God.
Hey, tell them to cover up. I will not be hot-shamed.
Talk about making an impact.
Make wrestling sexy again.
Scarlett Bordeaux has arrived. And now she's leaving, and it's, oh Lord.
Turn the lights down low, because it's time for Impact Lights Out.
This is Felix the Cat Katlovski, and we have Gemini Joe with me, and we're talking Lights Out. That's getting you ready for everything coming soon to Impact Wrestling. We have matches for this week on Impact Wrestling for Friday, June 14th. We know that Rob Van Dam and Sabu, those ECW legends, they're going to be taking on the North. That's Ethan Page and the Walking Weapon, Josh Alexander. And we also know that Willie Mack will be taking on Unbreakable Michael Elgin. We also know that Jordan Grace, she'll be taking on Madison Rayne. It's been announced that Jessica Havoc is returning to Impact Wrestling. We saw her last week on Impact. I wonder what she'll be doing now that things are escalating, since she's aligned with Father James Mitchell and Su Yung. Several events in the calendar year coming soon to Impact Wrestling. We have Bash at the Brewery. That'll be a joint show. It's a special. It will take place on Friday, July 5th from San Antonio, Texas. We also have Deep Impact. That'll be another joint show at Booker T World Gym Arena in Houston, Texas. And it takes place the very next night on Saturday, July 6th. Then you have Slammiversary. That's Sunday, July 7th from Dallas, Texas. That's 3 shows in Texas right there. We know that the Impact World title match will be Michael Elgin taking on Brian Cage, the champion. And then we know that Impact Wrestling, well, they'll be returning to Canada. They'll be in Windsor, Ontario, Canada for TV tapings at St. Clair College from July 19th till July 20th. So get your tickets at BorderCityWrestling.com. Well, that does it for everything I have to report on Impact Wrestling for this week on Lights Out.
All right, so for Felix the Cat, this is Gemini Joe, and we will see you next week here on Talk Wrestling Live. North Coast Underground. The Underground starts with you.
You've been listening to Talk Wrestling Live. Listen live on Mondays at 4 p.m. on NorthCoastUnderground.com.
And follow us on Twitter at TWL 24/7.
Goodbye, and good night, bad. Rest in EP87.